Hi. Hi. Ugh, my hair's a mess. I've been teaching myself how to back comb. It's not going great. Problem is I haven't actually been doing anything with the front. I need my fringe back in operation. But anyway, hello, welcome. It's that time again. Time for Dexter. I do have my glasses fixed. What's up? But I'm not wearing them because of vanity and they're like over there. But I got my mum's frames. Hello. I need my fringe back. I miss it. It's my mum's new frames that she didn't have for very long, but I can't have them as my glasses. See, I look like a turf. I look like I should be posting hot takes about women and girls and like friggin' I don't know what kind of dumb shit they say. Ugh. Not good. I don't like them. I can't even see what I look like in them because the prescription is so thick. But yeah. So that is why I can't use mum's frames. Because I look like a turf. My auntie Shona said that she would use them. Oh, she went away to post online and get cancelled. And also to patrol the bathrooms for, like, I don't know, vagina patrol, I guess. It's a tough job. Someone's got to do it. I just realized that's what female body inspectors do. Oh, that's problematic. Anyway, previously on Dexo, the case of Charles Dexter Ward. What? The fuck you say? Miss Frizzle wore glasses. She had to have. What? Oh my god, it's the Mandela effect. It's happening just like in that movie that was probably really good. Oh my god. Yeah, I still have my clip-in fringe, but it's dyed the color of my hair down here and not the color of my natural hair up here. So when I clip it in, it just looks so really, really fake. So I got to get that seen too. So I can be Kate Bush for Halloween and run around pretending that I think Kate Bush was in Fleetwood Mac just to annoy people. Once you can't binge drink, you have so few pleasures in life. That's not true. Anyway. Previously on Dexo, Lovecraft has had to basically spell out what he's been implying. So Charles Dexter Ward has unearthed the memory of this guy, Joseph Curwen, who lived in the late 17th century through the 18th century, just about, because he was unnaturally long-lived, doing secret rituals and things, and had the devil's mark put on him, probably. JC. Yeah, exactly. Sorry. He was also known as Jesus Christ, possibly. Fan theory of mine, where they're all teens and they're in high school. Joseph Curwen was friends with Edward Hutchinson and Simon Orne, who were in the same village and also got out of Salem before the hangings. They have all learned, forbidden. Yeah, that's true. Especially Gilgamesh. That shit rips off the Bible so hard. So they were all friends in Salem. They've all learned some extremely forbidden rituals to call up things. They can prepare the bodies of the dead in such a way that they can call up the spirits of those dead people from the essential salts and ask them questions and shit. And they can also call on things from the outer spheres, which, since this is Lovecraft, we're talking, Lovecraftian horror. Oh yeah, Fight Club was totally... It blew my mind when I realized that Jesus and Judas were the same guy. Sorry, no spoilers, but I was just like, what? And then it all made sense. So Charles Ward is a young guy obsessed with the past. He's found out that Joseph Curwen is his ancestor. He's found out all of this stuff. Suddenly got very, very secretive. And now he's just kind of snapped like Mary Margladine. He's gone all peculiar anyway. And I should be. I know the Bible better than anybody. And what I don't know, no one gives a shit about. So it's like the Corinthians. Like, I'm going to go to Corinthia. It's another planet. Duh. Oh my god, Fight Club is the Book of Job in first person. Well, I don't want to read any other Chuck Palahniuk books. I already read friggin' Invisible Monsters and Lullaby, and I didn't read Rant. I read the Ghost Story one, the Haunted House one. Anyway, Charles Ward's dad and doctor are both very freaked out. So they are investigating Charles's place in Pawtuxet, which was built on the site of the cursed farm of Joseph Curwen, right? They've come in here. They've found a secret passage to the fabled tunnels beneath the Pawtuxet farm that no one's proved the existence of until now. Oh no, I'm getting cramps. That sucks. Oh, that sucks. Okay. We're good. We're good. I was like, what was that? Oh no. Lovecraft will be horrified. So they've found the manhole, the secret passage. They've opened the manhole, and the dad has just become completely overcome by the fumes and stuff. And the doctor has had to take him home. So Dr. Willett has gone back to the place. Willett was able to send a beam of light down the Stygian hole. For about 10 feet, he saw it was a sheer cylindrical drop with concrete walls and an iron ladder, after which the hole appeared to strike a flight of old stone steps, which must originally have emerged to Earth somewhat southwest of the present building. Wow, Rant was very impressive. I didn't know you could write anything that was bad from every perspective. True pioneer of Ben Shapiro. Damn, that's scathing. That's scathing to friggin' Chuck Palahniuk, or however you say it, and Ben Shapiro. Nice. Nicely done. Oh. And we said, let there be light. You coming up, sweetheart? You coming up then? Right, I'm just gonna... it's my last mini. Hey, good luck. Can't remember if I read Choke. I might have done. Okay, are we ready to beginneth? Yeah, it's nearly 10 minutes in. All of us seem to be here. The cat keeps staring at me. Otherwise, good. Case of Charles Dexter Ward, Part 5, I believe. Chapter 2. Willett freely admits that for a moment the memory of the old Kerwin legends kept him from climbing down alone into that malodorous gulf. He could not help thinking of what Luke Fenner had reported on that last monstrous night. I don't remember what that was either. This is about a tunnel in Rhode Island. That's crazy. Lovecraft country. Anything can happen. Then duty asserted itself, and he made the plunge, carrying a great valise for the removal of whatever papers might prove of supreme importance. Slowly, as befitted one of his years, he descended the ladder and reached the slimy steps below. This was ancient masonry, his torch told him, and upon the dripping walls he saw the unwholesome moss of centuries. Down, down ran the steps, not spirally, but in 3 abrupt turns, and with such narrowness that 2 men could have passed only with difficulty. He had counted about 30 when a sound reached him very faintly, and after that he did not feel disposed to count any more. It was a godless sound, one of those low-keyed, insidious outrages of nature which are not meant to be. It's probably like, I wouldn't like to hear it. Your face is of supreme importance. Bitch. Yeah, it's probably like a meow or a ring, 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 ring that just keeps going and you can't make it stop. To call it a dull wail, a doom-dragged whine, or a hopeless howl of chorused anguish and stricken flesh without mind would be to miss its most quintessential loathsomeness and soul-sickening overtones. Oh, did it sound like... Who's... I was going to make a joke like like Justin Bieber, but then I legitimately didn't know who the young people like at the moment. Is it BTS? And then, is that racist? I don't think so. It was a quack that did not echo. A distressed cat. Yeah. A possum. They make freaky monster noises outside. It's, if you're not expecting it, it's quite... It's not very nice. Siri, play young people music. What are they listening to? Do they like the Pixies? I don't know. They like Billie Eilish, who I believe is a dancing boy of some kind. Just kidding, I quite like Billie Eilish. Was it for this that Ward had seemed to listen on the day he was removed? It was the most shocking thing that Willett had ever heard, and it continued from no determinate point as the doctor reached the bottom of the steps and cast his torchlight around on lofty corridor walls surmounted by cyclopean vaulting and pierced by numberless black archways. Oh yeah, I've heard fox noises like on YouTube and I did not like it. One time we were living near one of the farms, I thought there was a man outside my window because I could hear like breathing and occasional coughing, and it turned out it was just a sheep that had gotten into our garden. It was quite freaky in the middle of the night. Hey, Josh, how's it going? Yeah, he loves the word cyclopean. You can honestly just take a drink when you hear it. That's in my eyes, and you can't see Flora anyway. A hedgehog under her bed. That's a pretty good chog. Whoa! It came on again. I didn't touch it. Now it won't go off. Oh, it's off now. It's all very exciting, isn't it? It's very Halloween. I was on Shein.com looking at t-shirts. I saw one that said "boy bye," and then I started laughing, thinking about wearing it to a funeral. I'm such a piece of shit. Anyway. Oh, that would be so scary. How could there be scare chogs at the... Scared? That's not a thing. The hall in which he stood was perhaps 14 feet high to the middle of the vaulting and 10 or 12 feet broad. Hi, madam. Its pavement was of large chipped flagstones, and its walls and roof were of dressed masonry. Its length he could not imagine, for it stretched ahead indefinitely into the blackness. Of the archways, some had doors of the old six-panelled colonial type, whilst others had none. Hello. You going to come sit? Then I will have to put the light on, won't I? So all the nice people can see you. God, you smell fucking terrible, cat. What on earth have you been doing? Do you need to go outside? Still can't see her. There she is. Flora. Flora. Do you need to go outside? If the person was my... Floridora, she is. If the person was my sworn enemy, I would wear a t-shirt that says, my enemy is dead. And then when people ask me about it, I'd be like, oh, no, shit, no, a different enemy. She has been bugging me all day. She's been a real pain in the ass. And now that, you know, you guys can see her, she doesn't want to be pretty. You don't want to be pretty. Oh, yeah. The skeleton spiders were pretty good. What are you going to do? You are going to sit there. Okay. Thank you. She is, baby. You're a selfish little teenage brat, that's what you are. And I have earned this through karma. You know. Overcoming the dread induced by the smell and the howling. It does sound like a cat. Willett began to explore these archways one by one, finding behind them rooms with groined stone ceilings, each of medium size and apparently of bizarre uses. Most of them had fireplaces, the upper courses of whose chimneys would have formed an interesting study in engineering. Never before or since had he seen such instruments, or suggestions of instruments, as here loomed up on every hand through the burying dust and cobwebs of a century and a half, in many cases evidently shattered as if by the ancient raiders. For many of the chambers seemed wholly untrodden by modern feet, and must have represented the earliest and most obsolete phases of Joseph Curwen's experimentation. The smell and the howling, a guide to natural home birth. Oh, that's terrifying. Finally, there came a room of obvious modernity, or at least of recent occupancy. There were oil heaters, bookshelves and tables, chairs and cabinets, and a desk piled high with papers of varying antiquity and contemporaneousness. Candlesticks and oil lamps stood about in several places. And finding a match safe handy, Willett lighted such as were ready for use. You toad. You utter toad. Yeah, I read the smell and the howling. I just thought about the cat. In the fuller gleam, it appeared that this apartment was nothing less than the latest study or library of Charles Ward. Of the books, the doctor had seen many before, and a good part of the furniture had plainly come from the Prospect Street mansion. Here and there was a piece well known to Willett, and the sense of familiarity became so great that he half forgot the noisomeness and the wailing, both of which were plainer here than they had been at the foot of the steps. His first duty, as planned long ahead, was to find and seize any papers which might seem of vital importance, especially those portentous documents found by Charles so long ago behind the picture in Olney Court. As he searched, he perceived how stupendous a task the final unravelling would be, for file on file was stuffed with papers in curious hands and bearing curious designs, so that months or even years might be needed for a thorough deciphering and editing. Once he found large packets of letters with Prague and Rakos postmarks, and in writing clearly recognisable as Orne's and Hutchinson's, all of which he took with him as part of the bundle to be removed in his valise. Valise? I don't know how to say that word. I know what it is, but I don't know how to say it. What it is a suitcase. Kind of. Yeah. I've got the light on, and it's going right in my eyes. This is the pronunciation. Yep. He's putting all of the essential papers in a big old phallus that he's brought down with him. Well done. Well done, Dr. Willett. At last, in a locked mahogany cabinet once gracing the ward home, Willett found a bunch of old Curwen papers, recognising them from the reluctant glimpse Charles had granted him so many years ago. It's like a more fancy suitcase, basically. The youth had evidently kept them together very much as they had been when first he found them, since all the titles recalled by the workman were present except the papers addressed to Orne and Hutchinson, and the cipher with its key. Willett placed the entire lot in his phallus and continued the examination of the files. Since young Ward's immediate condition was the greatest matter at stake, the closest searching was done among the most obviously recent matter, and in this abundance of contemporary manuscript, one very baffling oddity was noted. The oddity was the slight amount in Charles's normal writing, which indeed included nothing more recent than 2 months before. On the other hand, there were literally reams of symbols and formulae, historical notes, and philosophical comment in a crabbed penmanship absolutely identical with the ancient script of Joseph Curwen, though of undeniably modern dating. Plainly, a part of the latter-day program had been a sedulous imitation of the old wizard's writing, which Charles seemed to have carried to a marvellous state of perfection. Of any third hand, which might have been Alan's, there was not a trace. If he had indeed come to be the leader, he must have forced young Ward to act as his amanuensis. Don't know if I'm pronouncing that word right either. Yeah, valise. Valise? I don't know. I don't know how to say it in English. Do I? Now she knows I'm in a whimsical mood. She doesn't like me in a whimsical mood. There you go. Oh, good. We can turn this one off now. You don't need the light to see her. Yeah, this is the conclusion he's come to. Valise. Valisi. I'm just going to alternate pronunciations. It just keeps turning itself on. It's freaky. I mean, I'm smart. In this new material, one mystic formula, or rather pair of formulae, recurred so often that Willett had it by heart before he had half finished his quest. It consisted of 2 parallel columns, the left-hand one surmounted by the archaic symbol called Dragon's Head, and used in almanacs to indicate the ascending node, and the right-hand one headed by a corresponding sign of Dragon's Tail, or descending node. The appearance of the whole was something like this. Something like that. It's Cyclopean! No! Is it ancient, which can mean good or bad? Oh my god. The appearance of the hole was something like this, and almost unconsciously the doctor realized that the second half was no more than the first written syllabically backward, with the exception of the final monosyllables and of the odd name Yog Sothoth, which he had come to recognize under various spellings from other things he had seen in connection with this horrible matter. The formulae were as follows, exactly so, as Willett is abundantly able to testify, and the first one struck an odd note of uncomfortable latent memory in his brain, which he recognized later when reviewing the events of that horrible Good Friday of the previous year. So, okay, I'm just going to show you the formulae instead of attempting to pronounce the dumbass fucking Lovecraft words. So imagine that switched. Yeah, on Good Friday, Charles Ward went kind of mental screaming in his room. And I am girl now, so I've got that going for me, which is nice. Much better handwriting. Yeah, basically. So haunting were these formulae, and so frequently did he come upon them, that before the doctor knew it, he was repeating them under his breath. Never read the Latin. Come on, bro. I know it's not Latin, but the principle stands. Eventually, however, he felt he had secured all the papers he could digest to advantage for the present, hence resolved to examine no more till he could bring the sceptical alienists en masse for an ampler and more systematic raid. He had still to find the hidden laboratory, so leaving his valise in the lighted room, he emerged again into the black, noisome corridor, whose vaulting echoed ceaselessly with that dull and hideous whine. Oh, it's the dial-up tone, I get it. That makes sense. I know! Also, hello Alex, welcome. But yeah, don't say the words out loud, ever. The next few rooms he tried were all abandoned, or filled only with crumbling boxes and ominous-looking leaden coffins, but impressed him deeply with the magnitude of Joseph Curwen's original operations. He thought of the enslaved people and the sailors who had disappeared, of the graves which had been violated in every part of the world, and of what that final raiding party must have seen, and then he decided it was better not to think any more. Once a great stone staircase mounted at his right, and he deduced that this must have reached to one of the Curwen outbuildings, perhaps the famous stone edifice with the high slit-like windows, provided the steps he had descended had led from the steep-roofed farmhouse. Suddenly the wall seemed to fall away ahead, and the stench and the wailing grew stronger. Willett saw that he had come upon a vast open space, so great that his torchlight would not carry across it, and as he advanced he encountered occasional stout pillars supporting the arches of the roof. Latin is the poor man's ancient language, exactly. Lovecraft language is where it's at. Yeah, and anything to do with Lovecraft, not thinking about it is the best decision you can make. Be pretty funny if under there it connected to the underground part at Exon Priory from the Rats on the Walls. Just everything in Lovecraft stories has a tunnel that connects to that place. That'd be pretty funny. It won't be, though. After a time, he reached a circle of pillars grouped like the monoliths of Stonehenge, with a large carved altar on a base of 3 steps in the centre. And so curious were the carvings on that altar that he approached to study them with his electric light. Back to bad decisions. But when he saw what they were, he shrank away, shuddering, and did not stop to investigate the dark stains which discoloured the upper surface, and had spread down the sides in occasional thin lines. Instead, he found the distant wall and traced it as it swept around in a gigantic circle, perforated by occasional black doorways, and indented by a myriad of shallow cells with iron gratings, and wrist and ankle bonds on chains fastened to the stone of the concave rear masonry. These cells were empty, but still the horrible odour and the dismal moaning continued, more insistent now than ever, and seemingly varied at times by a sort of slippery thumping. Ew. Well, that was the end of chapter 2. At some point, I've bit the side of my tongue quite badly. I think, like, in the night. So, if I'm lisping a little bit, that's what's going on there. Yeah, we're doing more book. First vote gets it. You got it, Dan. Daniel, I'm sorry. Some people don't like being called Dan when their name is Daniel. Yeah, Lovecraft, he's just like married to his thesaurus. He loves it. Unless the word is ancient or cyclopean, in which case he's like, oh, thesaurus, we need to compromise. Chapter 3. From that frightful smell and that uncanny noise, got it again, Willet's attention could no longer be diverted. Oh, Danny, I'm glad. I'm glad this is improving you. I will keep going forever. Or for a bit longer. Both were plainer and more hideous in the great pillared hall than anywhere else, and carried a vague impression of being far below, even in this dark netherworld of subterranean mystery. Before trying any of the black archways for steps leading further down, the doctor cast his beam of light about the stone-flagged floor. It was very loosely paved, and at irregular intervals there would occur a slab curiously pierced by small holes in no definite arrangement, while at one point there lay a very long ladder carelessly flung down. Oh, the dude loved words. It has been a difficult thing going from Arthur Machen's beautiful, elegant prose to this. Arthur Machen is like, he's just like this wonderful theremin melody, and Lovecraft is like a guy tripping over a bunch of wind chimes. That's how it feels to read them. No offense, Lovecraft, you racist motherfucker. To this ladder, singularly enough, appeared to cling a particularly large amount of the frightful odour which encompassed everything. As he walked slowly about, it suddenly occurred to Willett that both the noise and the odour seemed strongest directly above the oddly pierced slabs, as if they might be crude trapdoors leading down to some still deeper region of horror. Kneeling by one, he worked at it with his hands, and found that with extreme difficulty he could budge it. At his touch, the moaning beneath ascended to a louder key. Ooh, it's getting saucy. And only with vast trepidation did he persevere in the lifting of the heavy stone. A stench unnameable now rose up from below, and the doctor's head reeled dizzily as he laid back the slab and turned his torch upon the exposed square yard of gaping blackness. Subterranean mystery. Losing your virginity in the basement. Where would you call it? Such a child, honestly. If he had if he had expected a flight of steps to some wide gulf of ultimate abomination, rats in the walls, Willett was destined to be disappointed. For amidst that fetor and cracked whining, he discerned only the brick-faced top of a cylindrical well, perhaps a yard and a half in diameter, and devoid of any ladder or other means of descent. As the light shone down, the wailing changed suddenly to a series of horrible yelps, in conjunction with which there came again that sound of blind, futile scrambling and slippery thumping. The explorer trembled, unwilling even to imagine what noxious thing might be lurking in that abyss, but in a moment mustered up the courage to peer over the rough-hewn brink, lying at full length and holding the torch downward at arm's length to see what might lie below. Jesus. For a second he could distinguish nothing but the slimy, moss-grown brick walls sinking illimitably into that half-tangible miasma of murk and foulness and anguished frenzy. And then he saw that something dark was leaping clumsily and frantically up and down at the bottom of the narrow shaft, which must have been from 20 to 25 feet below the stone floor where he lay. The torch shook in his hand, but he looked again to see what manner of living creature might be immured there in the darkness of that unnatural well, left starving by young Ward through all the long months since the doctors had taken him away, and clearly only one of a vast number prisoned in the kindred wells whose pierced stone covers so thickly studded in the floor of the ancient vaulted cavern. Whatever the things were, they could not lie down in their cramped spaces, but must have crouched and whined and waited and feebly leaped all these hideous weeks since their master had abandoned them unheeded. Slippery thumping, losing your virginity in the basement. But Marinus Bicknell Willett was sorry that he looked again. For surgeon and veteran of the dissecting room though he was, he has not been the same since. Yeah, not that Lovecraft would know it. It is hard to explain just how a single sight of a tangible object with measurable dimensions could so shake and change a man. And we may only say that there is about certain outlines and entities a power of symbolism and suggestion which acts frightfully on a sensitive thinker's perspective and whispers terrible hints of obscure cosmic relationships and unnameable realities behind the protective illusions of common vision. Uncanny Valley. Yeah, we just have 2 words for it now. In that second look, Willett saw such an outline or entity, for during the next few instants he was undoubtedly as stark mad as any inmate of Dr. Waite's private hospital. He dropped the electric torch from a hand drained of muscular power or nervous coordination, nor heeded the sound of crunching teeth which told of its fate at the bottom of the pit. He screamed and screamed and screamed, in a voice whose falsetto panic no acquaintance of his would ever have recognized. And though he could not rise to his feet, he crawled and rolled desperately away over the damp pavement, where dozens of Tartarian wells poured forth their exhausted whining and yelping to answer his own insane cries. He tore his hands on the rough, loose stones, and many times bruised his head against the frequent pillars, but still he kept on. I'm sorry, but this is a very funny mental image to me. Oh, yeah, for sure. Then at last he slowly came to himself in the utter blackness and stench, and stopped his ears against the droning wail into which the burst of yelping had subsided. He was drenched with perspiration and without means of producing a light, stricken and unnerved in the abysmal blackness and horror, and crushed with a memory he never could efface. Beneath him dozens of those things still lived, and from one of the shafts the cover was removed. He knew that what he had seen could never climb up the slippery walls, yet shuddered at the thought that some obscure foothold might exist. Oh yeah, Lovecraft did know about PTSD. Maybe he had it from seeing an octopus as a child. I don't know. But he knows what's what with PTSD. What the thing was, he would never tell. It was like some of the carvings on the hellish altar, but it was alive. Nature had never made it in this form, for it was too palpably unfinished. The deficiencies were of the most surprising sort, and the abnormalities of proportion could not be described. Willett consents only to say that this type of thing must have represented entities which Ward called up from imperfect salts, and which he kept for servile or ritualistic purposes. If it had not had a certain significance, its image would not have been carved on that damnable stone. It was not the worst thing depicted on that stone, but will it never open the other pits? At the same time, or at the time, the first connected idea in his mind was an idle paragraph from some of the old Curwen data he had digested long before, a phrase used by Simon or Jedediah Orne in that portentous confiscated letter to the bygone sorcerer. Certainly there was nothing but the liveliest awfulness in that which H raised up from what he could only gather a part of. Yeah, does make sense. No, Lovecraft didn't serve in World War One. He was either too young. I think he was too young. Yeah, and he was also a sensitive boy and a rich boy, so he didn't really have to. But he would have known people who did. So he may have seen a minority as a kid. Yeah. He was a fancy lad. An unhappy lad. Then, horribly supplementing rather than displacing this image, there came a recollection of those ancient lingering rumours anent the burned, twisted thing found in the fields a week after the Curwen raid. Charles Ward had once told the doctor what old Slocum said of that object, that it was neither thoroughly human nor wholly allied to any animal which Pawtuxet folk had ever seen or read about. They were haunted AF, absolutely. These words hummed in the doctor's mind as he rocked to and fro, squatting on the nitrous stone floor. He tried to drive them out, and repeated the Lord's Prayer to himself, eventually trailing off into a mnemonic hodgepodge like the modernistic wasteland of Mr. T.S. Eliot, and finally reverting to the oft-repeated dual formula he had lately found in Ward's underground library. Yai, Ningna, Yog-Sothoth, and so on, until the final underlined Zhro. It seemed to soothe him, and he staggered to his feet after a time, lamenting bitterly his fright-lost torch, and looking wildly about for any gleam of light in the clutching inkiness of the chilly air. Think he would not, but he strained his eyes in every direction for some faint glint or reflection of the bright illumination he had left in the library. After a while he thought he detected a suspicion of a glow, infinitely far away, and towards this he crawled in agonized caution on hands and knees amidst the stench and howling, always feeling ahead lest he collide with the numerous great pillars or stumble into the abominable pit he had uncovered. I don't think he burned T.S. Eliot. Maybe he was just like, I have nothing else to compare this to that I'm thinking about. Here's something my readers will understand. But yes, T.S. Eliot should write a poem about a cat called Howard Virgin Puss. Once, his shaking fingers touched something which he knew must be the steps leading to the hellish altar, and from this spot he recoiled in loathing. At another time he encountered the pierced slab he had removed, and here his caution became almost pitiful. But he did not come upon the dread aperture after all, nor did anything issue from that aperture to detain him. That's what Sonia Green said after their marriage was dissolved. What had been down there made no sound nor stir. Evidently its crunching of the fallen electric torch had not been good for it. Each time Willet's fingers felt a perforated slab, he trembled. His passage over it would sometimes increase the groaning below, but generally it would produce no effect at all, since he moved very noiselessly. Several times during his progress the glow ahead diminished perceptibly, and he realized that the various candles and lamps he had left must be expiring one by one. The thought of being lost in utter darkness without matches amidst this underground world of nightmare labyrinths impelled him to rise to his feet and run, which he could safely do now that he had passed the open pit, for he knew that once the light failed, his only hope of rescue and survival would lie in whatever relief party Mr. Ward might send after missing him for a sufficient period. Presently, however, he emerged from the open space into the narrower corridor and definitely located the glow as coming from a door on his right. In a moment he had reached it and was standing once more in young Ward's secret library, trembling with relief, and watching the sputterings of that last lamp which had brought him to safety. The end of chapter 3. Yeah. It's not an insult. I just think it's so brave of him to write in such a way that it sounds like an alien language and not even like English. I just wish I had the courage to suck as badly as he does and just like feel so confident about it. That's if H.P. Lovecraft was like a mean girl. Yeah. So that's all quite exciting, but also, geez, Dr. Willett, you took one electric torch into these incredibly cursed tunnels. You found matches down there, but didn't take them. Just lit a bunch of lamps and then carried on with your one light source. Okay. Chapter 4. In another moment, he was hastily filling the burned out lamps from an oil supply he had previously noticed, and when the room was bright again, he looked about to see if he might find a lantern for further exploration. The important part is that he tried. Indiana Willett and the Curse of Kerwin. He's really the hero of the piece. For racked though he was with horror, his sense of grim purpose was still uppermost, and he was firmly determined to leave no stone unturned in his search for the hideous facts behind Charles Ward's bizarre madness. Failing to find a lantern, he chose the smallest of the lamps to carry, also filling his pocket with matches and candles, and taking with him a gallon can of oil, which he proposed to keep for reserve use in whatever hidden laboratory he might uncover beyond the terrible open space with its unclean altar and nameless covered wells. To traverse that space again would require his utmost fortitude, but he knew it must be done. Fortunately, neither the frightful altar nor the open shaft was near the vast cell-indented wall which bounded the cavern area, and whose black, mysterious archways could form the next goals of a logical search. I mean, at this point, you'd want to go back up to the surface and get a bunch of people, or at least tell somebody, if I'm not back in an hour, fucking panic. But no, not Dr. Willett. Not Dr. Willett. Sorry, my tongue's just really sore. Yeah, you come into the dark tunnel, like, help me out here. Let's not, get lost alone and no one ever finds out what happened to us. Ideally. Like the guys that I read about in 1770. Dr. Willett knows all this. No, none. None at all. I mean, if they had common sense, it still wouldn't help them because this is Lovecraft, but they don't have any common sense. It's crazy. So, Willett went back to that great pillared hall of stench and anguish howling, like we've forgotten, turning down his lamp to avoid any distant glimpse of the hellish altar or of the uncovered pit with the pierced stone slab beside it. Most of the black doorways led merely to small chambers, some vacant and some evidently used as storerooms, and in several of the latter he saw some very curious accumulations of various objects. One was packed with rotting and dust-draped bales of spare clothing, and the explorer thrilled when he saw that it was unmistakably the clothing of a century and a half before, which at this point is the 1770s. He is as good an explorer as he's a better explorer than he is a psychiatrist. My cat did not get my tongue. I seem to have bit my tongue very hard when I was sleeping. I think. Oh, sorry. It really hurts. Yeah, he's way better at spelunking than he is at brain science. In another room, he found numerous odds and ends of modern clothing, as if gradual provisions were being made to equip a large body of men. But what he disliked most of all were the huge copper vats which occasionally appeared. These and the sinister incrustations upon them. He liked them even less than the weirdly figured leaden bowls whose rims retained such obnoxious deposits, and around which clung repellent odours perceptible above even the general noisomeness of the crypt. Sounds like my cat food bowls. Hang on, got cramps. Hang on. Just gonna wait for that to pass. Okay, we're good. We're better. When he had completed about half the entire circuit of the wall, he found another corridor like that from which he had come, and out of which many doors opened. This he proceeded to investigate, and after entering 3 rooms of medium size and no significant contents, he came at last to a large oblong apartment whose business-like tanks and tables, furnaces and modern instruments, occasional books and endless shelves of jars and bottles proclaimed it indeed the long-sought laboratory of Charles Ward, and no doubt of old Joseph Curwen before him. I don't like the brass pots or the bowls. I don't like any of this. Just a bit of light reading. Setting up an evil altar, fucking up the salts. Well, luckily Curwen had already left him, the fuck up wells to keep that in. Hang on. I know this is like super unprofessional, but I just need to pee. I'm going to mute it and come back in a second. Also, I'm not a professional. Why would I be professional? Ta-da! Ugh, bath salts. That was crazy. That one guy ate that other guy's face, and we were like, apocalypse, end of the world. Too early. I am back. I'm back, and I'm gonna take some ibuprofen. New Zealand's pretty good at the moment. It's only ibuprofen. I have a fairly high drug tolerance, which sucks. Sounds cool, but it sucks. But anyway, that should help my tongue as well. Yeah, New Zealand's alright at the moment. Just waiting on the results of the cannabis referendum, which looks like it's not going... Looks like it's not going to pass. But yeah, not having the Nats in power is great. They exploded their party by using a bunch of Trump talking points, and people didn't like it. I really thought it was going to work here, but it just didn't. And they split off into a bunch of kind of alt-right groups, and some of them were libertarian, and some of them were like hardcore Christian, and they just kind of split up the vote way too much. Pretty good. So much schadenfreude. There was Mike Hoskins' face, which I didn't even watch election night. I just saw Mike Hoskins' face like as a meme that whole night. Pretty good. Pretty good. Okay, let's get into it. New conservative. They did get on. It was great. Oh, me too. Thank you. Thank you, Josh. I do also hope that weed comes through. I'm going to have to call my doctor tomorrow for a repeat codeine prescription, which they are very stingy with. I would much rather smoke weed. Who has a good time on codeine? Who wants codeine recreationally? No, thank you. Whereas if I was smoking weed, I could just ease the pain of the cramps and enjoy adventure time. Everyone wins. Oh, Christ, no. Nowhere near Ozzy Osbourne. My God. It's been higher than an average person, I guess. I always need the larger doses of like antidepressants and everything, which means you get, commensurate side effects, which is so great. But anyway, Dr. Willett found the lab. The monster lab. After lighting the 3 lamps which he found filled and ready, Dr. Willett examined the place and all its appurtenances with the keenest interest. Noting from the relative quantities of various reagents on the shelves that young Ward's dominant concern must have been with some branch of organic chemistry. No shit. He learned about the process to make essential salts, like... Yeah. Oh. Don't like the stretching. Oh. On the whole, little could be learned from the scientific ensemble, which included a gruesome-looking dissecting table, so that the room was really rather a disappointment. Wow, okay, at the beginning of this, Dr. Willett would have freaked about that dissecting table. I think he's getting spoiled. Among the books was a tattered old copy of Borellus in black letter, and it was weirdly interesting to note that Ward had underlined the same passage, whose marking had so perturbed good Mr. Merritt at Curwen's farmhouse more than a century and a half before. That older copy, of course, must have perished along with the rest of Curwen's occult library in the final raid. 3 archways opened off the Liveread, the laboratory, and these the doctor proceeded to sample in turn. From his cursory survey, he saw that 2 merely led to small storerooms, but these he canvassed with care, remarking the piles of coffins in various stages of damage, and shuddering violently at 2 or 3 of the few coffin plates he could decipher. The coffin plate is the thing on front that has the person's name on it. You know. You know what a coffin plate is. There was much clothing also stored in these rooms, and several new and tightly nailed boxes which he did not stop to investigate. Most interesting of all, perhaps, were some odd bits which he judged to be fragments of old Joseph Curwen's laboratory appliances. These had suffered damage at the hands of the raiders, but were still partly recognizable as the chemical paraphernalia of the Georgian period. God, this would be... See, I don't find codeine fun. I find the lack of period pain a lot of fun. That part of it I do enjoy, but I just, yeah, it's like a fever dream, but I'm feeling not great. I just have the fever dream aspect. But like, how good would it be to see some of this shit showing up on Antiques Roadshow, though? I say, do you happen to know what this is? No, we just kept it on a little urn in the mantelpiece. Well, actually, rather astonishing. These are the essential salts of Joseph Curwen. Oh, the essential salts of Joseph Curwen, Arthur. Oh. Have you any idea what this might be worth at auction? No. I'm a working class person who's a fucking idiot. Oh, we kept it in the mantle and I always put my cigarettes out in it. That's exactly what Antiques Roadshow's like all the time, except without any drama or wizards. Vodka and local access TV. We don't have any local access TV. The whole country's just local. But I found out about some of it through John Oliver's TV show, and it was really weird. Really weird. Joseph Curwen, darling. He's the man on the $500 bill. Yeah. They're like, oh, hey up. 'Tis Queen Victoria's brooch. Aye. We've been using it as an ashtray up north. Like, oh, Queen Victoria's brooch, yes. I've often reflected on my Twitter about no, I haven't seen Channel 9. The cat's destroyed my TV aerial, so I don't actually have TV. I'll have to look it up on wow, Dunedin has its own TV station. I've lived here like 6 years and I didn't know. That's amazing. I lived here 8 years. Crikey. But yeah, Antiques Roadshow, I love the idea of them just looking at an old person's junk. Like literally junk. Being like, oh, well, what you've brought in here is actually remarkable pair of antique genitalia. In fact, if you look around the back here, and I don't know if our cameras can catch that, actually a pair of rather fine testicles. Well, behind the penis. Yeah, behind the penis, follow that line right there. Oh, I see them. I can see them now. Yeah, exactly. That's what I think Antiques Roadshow should be now. And if you follow all the way around, there is a form of rudimentary butt. Have you any idea what this might be worth at auction? I'd love it. I'd think it would be so great. Absolutely remarkable. Thank you so much for bringing this in today. Say thank you, Arthur. Thank you. Anyway, let's carry on with the horror story and not the considerably more horrifying idea of old people genitalia on Antiques Roadshow. Oh, Josh, buddy, we have an Arnold Rimmer lookalike. Oh, motherfucker, use polite hands, you stupid bitch. Sorry, she started using claws when she climbs onto me, and it is a surprise and it hurts. But the leader of one of our fringe political parties, David Seymour, is a dead ringer for Arnold Rimmer. Absolute dead ringer. Now you're gonna jump down, aren't you, freak? No? Oh, you're just gonna sit where the camera can't see you. Camera can't see you. Yeah, it is ridiculous how much they look alike. The guy is just, and he's a real piece of shit, so, you know, it's no harm to tell him what he looks like over social media. In my opinion. Right, the third archway led to a very sizable chamber entirely lined with shelves and having in the centre a table bearing 2 lamps. Oh, he's a much worse person than Roma. These lamps Willett lighted, and in their brilliant glow studied the endless shelving which surrounded him. Some of the upper levels were wholly vacant, but most of the space was filled with some small, odd-looking leaden jars of 2 general types. One tall and without handles, like a Grecian leukothos, or oil jug, and the other with a single handle and proportion like a phaleron jug. Shrug. All had metal stoppers and were covered with peculiar-looking symbols moulded in low relief. In a moment, the doctor noticed that these jugs were classified with great rigidity, all the leukothoi being on one side of the room, with a large wooden sign reading Custodes above them, and all the phalerons on the other, correspondingly labelled with a sign reading Materia. Each of the jars or jugs, except some on the upper shelves that turned out to be vacant, bore a cardboard tag with a number apparently referring to a catalogue, and Willett resolved to look for the latter presently. Materia, stuff. Custodes meaning guards. Like then the phrase quis custodiet ipsos custodies. Who guards the custard from the guards? The answer is no one, because I lived with a security guard for many, many years, and you could not get custard away from him. You couldn't wrestle it away from him. You couldn't trick it away from him. You couldn't gamble it away from him. You just got to buy your own custard and hide it. Not easy. Endless shelving. Did I lose a bet? No, I was born. My dad's a guard. And he loves custard. Gosh, we're all learning so much about Antiques Roadshow, about David Seymour, about custard. I know one who does. She's purring, being really sweet. For the moment, however, he was more interested in the nature of the array as a whole, apart from looking for the card catalogue, which they apparently have, and experimentally opened several of the leukothoi and phalerons at random, with a view to a rough generalization. Jesus, don't open them, dude. The result was invariable. Both types of jar contained a small quantity of a single kind of substance, a fine, dusty powder of very light weight and of many shades of dull neutral colour. What would you call that, Dr. Willett? What would you call it? Well, if I tell you what he guards, then, like, I could dox him. I don't really want to dox my dad. That seems like something you go to hell for. Uh, it guards whatever needs guarding. Plus, the world, in a way. Plus, me. And the custard, yeah. Basically the custard. To the colours, which form the only point of variation, there was no apparent method of disposal, and no distinction between what occurred in the leucothoi and what occurred in the phalerons. A bluish-grey powder might be by the side of a pinkish-white one, and any one in a phaleron might have its exact counterpoint in a leucothos. The most individual feature about the powders was their non-adhesiveness. Willett would pour one into his hand. Why? And upon returning it to its jug, would find that no residue whatever remained on his palm. Yeah, well, that's bloody lucky. Yeah, he's a Hasselhoff's bodyguard. Yeah, they call him the Hassel-Off because he keeps people from hassling Hasselhoff. Yes, I do need to go to heaven so I can kill God. It's kind of an open secret. He knows. I want him to be afraid and slaked out, kind of, before I get there. The meaning of the two signs puzzled him, and he wondered why in this battery of chemicals was separated so radically from those in glass jars on the shelves of the laboratory proper. Custodes materia, that was the Latin for guards and materials, respectively. And then there came a flash of memory as to where he had seen that word guards before in connection with this dreadful mystery. Yeah, bloody good thing. It was, of course, I've forgotten it already. I know you guys have, probably. In the recent letter to Dr. Allen, purporting to be from old Edward Hutchinson, and the phrase had read, "There was no need to keep the guards in shape and eating off their heads, and it made much to be found in case of trouble, as you too well know." What did this signify? But wait, was there not still another reference to guards in this matter which he had failed wholly to recall when reading the Hutchinson letter? Back in the old non-secretive days, Ward had told him of the Eleazar Smith diary, recording the spying of Smith and Whedon on the Kerwin farm. And in that dreadful chronicle there had been a mention of conversations overheard before the old wizard betook himself wholly beneath the earth. There had been, Smith and Whedon insisted, terrible colloquies wherein figured Kerwin, certain captives of his, and the guards of those captives. Those guards, according to Hutchinson, or his avatar, had eaten their heads off, so that now Dr. Allen did not keep them in shape. And if not in shape, how, save as the salts, to which it appears this wizard band was engaged in reducing as many human bodies or skeletons as they could? Oh, so that's why so much food was disappearing into the farm. He thought he had to keep the guards all the time. But then he was like, why don't I just turn the guards into essential salts as well, and then I can just pull them up when I need them? Probably more efficient. So that was what these leucothoi contained. The monstrous fruit of unhallowed rites and deeds, presumably won or cowed to such submission as to help, when called up by some hellish incantation, in the defence of their blasphemous master or the questioning of those who were not so willing. Willett shuddered at the thought of what he had been pouring in and out of his hands. Yeah, no shit. Jesus. And for a moment felt an impulse to flee in panic from that cavern of hideous shelves with their silent and perhaps watching sentinels. Then he thought of the materia and the myriad phaleron jugs in the other side of the room. Salts, too. And if not the salts of this, then the salts of what? God, Could it be possible that here lay the mortal relics of half the Titan thinkers of the ages, snatched by supreme ghouls from crypts where the world thought them safe, and subject to the beck and call of madmen who sought to drain their knowledge for some still wilder end whose ultimate effect would concern, as poor Charles had hinted in his frantic note, all civilization, all natural law, perhaps even the fate of the solar system and the universe. And Marinus Blacknell Willett had sifted their dust through his hands. That is really gross. Exciting new advancement in guarding. I'm very glad he didn't like it, yeah. Fellas, is it gay to let the essential salts of some of the best, greatest thinkers of the world rush through your hands? Bear in mind, they are non adhesive. I'm just glad, yeah, I'm glad he didn't like it. I'm glad he didn't snort any, could have fucked things up a little bit. Although, could have had amazing results. Yeah, like everything else people post on Twitter. Well, normal people. Fellas, is it gay to hug your friends? Only if your friend is also your boyfriend. And you're a dude. And then it's gay. Probably. I don't know. The rules are all changing. Amazing results. Amazing results. Oh, fuck. Hang on. I got cramps coming. I'm gonna have to breathe through. Sorry about this. Okay, I think we're good. Don't make me laugh. Oh, that would be so good if you could actually do that. I'm not apologizing for my pain. I'm apologizing for the unexpected time. Oh, we got two very different opinions. No, Flora's my co-star. Cramps is like the Kramer of whatever. The Kramer guy in that show, he's called Jerry. And Mr. Seinfeld's like, I can't stop Jerry Kramering in and eating all my food. He wants to eat all the soup in my fridge. And the soup Nazi has to come out. And there's a little guy called George Constantine. And I think he fights demons or something. Oh, here we go. Bit sore. Didn't plan this very well. And Elaine is the girl. And that's what I know about Seinfeld. Yeah, right. Then who's Jerry? Riddle me that. He's a Kramer. He doesn't. Patreon fund the reading of Seinfeld fanfic. He's not. His name isn't Kramer. He's a Kramer, and his name is Jerry. He's like a kind of man who lives in New York City. I think you're trolling me. I think all of this is fake. I don't think that seems right. No, he's called George Constantine. He fights demons. Elaine Venus. I'm such a baby. Then he noticed a small door at the farther end of the room. This is Dr. Willett we're back with. And calmed himself enough to approach it and examine the crude sign chiseled above. It was only a symbol, but it filled him with vague spiritual dread. For a morbid dreaming friend of his had once drawn it on paper and told him a few of the things it means in the dark abyss of sleep. It was the sign of Koth that dreamers see fixed above the archway of a certain black tower standing alone in twilight. And Willett did not like what his friend Randolph Carter had said of its powers. It's a whole story about Randolph Carter. It's part of the dream cycle, it's not. It's a show about nothing. I know, I never watched it because it seemed like the kind of thing that people who thought they were more important than they are watch, if you get what I mean. You just gotta Kramer in. Like a Kramer would do, like Jerry. I love this. This is just a prelude to Halloween. Yeah, Kate Bush was in Fleetwood Mac. I don't know who Stevie Nicks was. Stevie was Mac. Stevie was Fleetwood Mac. He was the guy. Kate Bush was the singer. I don't understand how people don't get this. I don't know. I didn't like Curb Your Enthusiasm either, but I watched the whole thing. I did laugh when Larry Curb went away to do a movie or a play or something, and when he came back, his mother had died and they'd had the funeral and everything. No one had told him because she didn't want to bother him while he was working. I'm ... baby. So true. Vote for me. I'm baby. Randolph Carter. But a moment later, he forgot the sign as he recognized a new acrid odor in the stench-filled air. This was a chemical rather than animal smell, and came clearly from the room behind the door. And it was unmistakably the same odor which had saturated Charles Ward's clothing on the day the doctors had taken him away. So it was here that the youth had been interrupted by the final summons. He was wiser than old Joseph Curwen, for he had not resisted. Willett, boldly determined to penetrate every wonder and nightmare this nether realm might contain. Oh, rude bugger! Seized the small lamp and crossed the threshold. A wave of nameless fright rolled out to meet him, but he yielded to no whim and deferred to no intuition. There was nothing alive here to harm him, and he would not be stayed in his piercing of the eldritch cloud which engulfed his patient. He's a shitty doctor, but he has a great sense of duty towards his patient. Not really my lip gloss. We good. Yeah, I know. I'm not disturbing you, my love. Ugh. Being engulfed by an eldritch cloud sounds like a dream right now. The room behind the door was of medium size and had no furniture save a table, a single chair, and two groups of curious machines with clamps and wheels, which Willett recognized after a moment as medieval instruments of torture. Okay. So this is just the fun room. A door of medium size. Yeah. The most medium size. Hello. Mwah. She's just lying in my arms being cute. Yeah, so good. Lovecraft is all about words. He likes all of them, and he wants to put all of them in his story. On one side of the door stood a rack of savage whips, above which were some shelves bearing empty rows of shallow, pedestaled cups of lead, shaped like Grecian coulices. On the other side was the table with a powerful argand lamp, a pad and pencil, and two of the stoppered lecuthoi from the shelves outside, set down at irregular places, as if temporarily or in haste. Willett lighted the lamp and looked carefully at the pad to see what notes young Ward might have been jotting down when interrupted, but found nothing more intelligible than the following disjointed fragments in that crabbed Kerwin chirography, which shed no light on a case as a whole. B died not, escaped into walls and found place below. Saw old V say the Sabaoth and learnt the way. Raised Yog Sothoth thrice and was the next day delivered. F sought to wipe out all knowing how to raise those from outside. He'll explain it to us later. Yeah, Lovecraft's everything. It's a mythos about nothing. It's about George Constantine fighting the Kramers. As the strong argon blaze lit up the entire chamber, the doctor saw that the wall opposite the door, between the two groups of torturing appliances in the corners, was covered with pegs from which hung a set of shapeless-looking robes of a rather dismal yellowish white. Tongue hurts. But far more interesting were the two vacant walls, both of which were thickly covered with mystic symbols and formulae roughly chiselled in the smooth dressed stone. The damp floor also bore marks of carving, and with but little difficulty Willett deciphered a huge pentagram in the centre, with a plain circle about 3 feet wide halfway between this and each corner. In one of these 4 circles, near where a yellowish robe had been flung carelessly down, there stood a shadow culex of the sort found on the shelves above the whip-rack, and just outside the periphery was one of the Phaleron jugs from the shelves in the other room, its tag numbered 118. This was unstoppered, and proved upon inspection to be empty, but the explorer saw with a shiver that the culex was not. Yeah, he loves that kind of thing. I gotta pick a more elegant writer. It's hard to say these words. Within its shallow area, and saved from scattering only by the absence of wind in this sequestered cavern, lay a small amount of a dried, dullish green, efflorescent powder, which must have belonged in the jug. And Willett almost reeled at the implications that came sweeping over him as he correlated little by little the several elements and antecedents of the scene. The whips and instruments of torture, the dust or salts from the jug of materia, the 2 lecuthoi from the custodes shelf, the robes, the formulae on the walls, the notes on the pad, the hints from letters and legends, and the 1,000 glimpses, doubts, and suppositions which had come to torment the friends and parents of Charles Ward. All these engulfed the doctor in a tidal wave of horror as he looked at that dry greenish powder outspread in the pedestaled leaden culex on the floor. With an effort, however, he'll tell us later. It's fine, we don't have to use our brains today. With an effort, however, Willett pulled himself together and began studying the formulae chiselled on the walls. From the stained and encrusted letters, it was obvious that they were carved in Joseph Curwen's time, and their text was such as to be vaguely familiar to one who has read much Curwen material, or delved extensively into the history of magic. One the doctor clearly recognised as what Mrs. Ward heard her son chanting on that ominous Good Friday a year before, and what an authority had told him was a very terrible invocation addressed to secret gods outside the normal spheres. It was not spelled here exactly as Mrs. Ward had set it down from memory, nor yet as the authority had shown it to him in the forbidden pages of Eliphas Levi, but its identity was unmistakable, and such words as Sabaoth, Metatron, Almuzan, and Zariatnatmik sent a shudder of fright through the searcher who had seen and felt so much of cosmic abomination just around the corner. Nearly done. Um, he usually spells it with a C, but he wants to spell it CK. He wants to spell everything CK. Nearly done. This was on the left-hand wall as one entered the room. The right-hand wall was no less thickly inscribed. I don't know. He already says shown instead of shown. Shown with an E instead of shown with an O. You know. He writes it like shown. Pretty weird. The right-hand wall was no less thickly inscribed, and Willett felt a start of recognition as he came upon the pair of formulae so frequently occurring in the recent notes in the library. They were, roughly speaking, the same, with the ancient symbols of dragon's head and dragon's tail heading them, as in Ward's scribblings. But the spelling differed quite widely from that of the modern versions, as if old Kerwin had had a different way of recording sound, or as if later study had evolved more powerful and perfected variants of the invocations in question. The doctor tried to reconcile the chiselled version with the one which still ran persistently in his head, and found it hard to do. With the script he had memorized began Yainga Yogsothoth. This epigraph started out as I Enenga Yogasothotha, which to his mind would seriously interfere with the syllabification of the second word. Doc, you're focused on the wrong shit. Just get out of there. For he had seen it, the madness of the abyss. Ground as the later text was into his consciousness, the discrepancy disturbed him, and he found himself chanting the first of the formulae aloud in an effort to square the sound he conceived with the letters he found carved. Jesus, Willett. Weird and menacing in that abyss of antique blasphemy rang his voice, its accents keyed to a droning sing-song, either through the spell of the past and the unknown, or through the hellish example of the dull, godless wail from the pits whose inhuman cadences rose and fell rhythmically in the distance, through the stench and the darkness. Yainga Yogsothoth, he leged Faithrodog. Ah! 'Twas near Miloro Clora. Yeah, old-timey spelling is the best. But what was this cold wind which had sprung into life at the very outset of the chant? You fucking idiot, Willett. The lamps were sputtering woefully, and the gloom grew so dense that the letters on the wall nearly faded from sight. There was smoke, too, and an acrid odour which quite drowned out the stench from the faraway wells, an odour like that he had smelled before, yet infinitely stronger and more pungent. He turned from the inscriptions to face the room with its bizarre contents, and saw that the kulix on the floor, in which the ominous efflorescent powder had lain, was giving forth a cloud of thick, greenish-black vapour of surprising volume and opacity. That powder! Great God, it had come from the shelf of materia. What was it doing now, and what had started it? The formula he had been chanting. The first of the pair. Dragon's head, ascending node. Blessed Saviour, could it be? Yeah, I think it could be, Charlie. Willett. The doctor reeled, and through his head raced wildly disjointed scraps from all he had seen, heard, and read of the frightful case of Joseph Kerwin and Charles Dexter Ward. I say to you again, do not call up any that you cannot put down. Have the words for laying at all times ready, and stop not to be sure any doubt of whom you have. 3 talks with what was therein inhumed. Mercy of heaven, what is that shape behind the parting smoke? The end of that chapter. And I can't read the next one because I'm super, super tired and my tongue hurts and I got cramps. But it has been a really fun. Yeah. I mean, why would he be reading them out loud in the room where all the shit was? Oh, thank you for making my day better. um, yeah, so join me tomorrow. Thank you, Josh. Oh, hi, Meredy. Thanks. Thanks. I will be back tomorrow to probably finish the story. And then after that, no Lovecraft. His sentences are just too clunky. I need something nicer to say. But yeah, tomorrow, the thrilling conclusion. Unless I make it to the shops to go grocery shopping. Kafka. I don't know about that. Oh, actually, there is a Kafka story in the penal colony, which is very funny because, the word penal. And also, anyway, we'll talk about this later. Yeah, baby says bye. Be angry. Be angry. That's what you get for having impolite hands earlier. Surprised what produce. Oh. Bye, angry baby. Oh, thank you. Bye. Bye, Flora. All right. Thanks, guys. I will see you tomorrow. Wash your hands. Be good to each other. And don't read the incantations out loud.